Hello, and thanks for joining us on Encore. Coming up on today's film show, bikers, crooks and dirty politics, Revengeance shows the low-rent side of Los Angeles. Canadian comedy Bad Seeds mixes marijuana and minus temperatures, and Gene Kelly's Footwork stands the test of time as An American in Paris is re-released, where else? Here in the French capital.
You can run, but you cannot hide.
This is about revenge.
Plus que tu penses que tu vas éviter le trouble, plus que le trouble, lui, il va te trouver.
Paris is like, it's like love, or art, or faith. It can't be explained, only felt.
Well, for all that, I'm joined by our film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia.
We're starting with a film released in France this week. Revengeance is the animated tale of a lying politician, private investigators and bounty hunters who are trying to get this lying, craven politician. It sounds quite topical.
Well, if independent animator Bill Plympton's latest feature seems to fit the zeitgeist to a T, that is actually pure coincidence because it takes about 3 years to make a film like this. Plympton, now 70, whose previous hand-drawn films have fun titles like I Married a Strange Person and Mutant Aliens and Cheatin', here worked for the first time with a co-director, Jim Lujan. Now, Senator Deathface is a former biker and wrestler with a colossal ego. He's also a narcissist and a psychopath. That's a lot for an animated character. He hires 4 bounty hunters, including Rod Rossi, the one-man posse, a scrawny but dedicated private investigator who lives with his elderly mother who answers the phone. Their mission is to track down an elusive young woman named Lana, who has a compromising object in her possession that she stole from Senator Deathface. It's crude and grotesque and paints a pretty funny portrait of low-rent Los Angeles. Let's take a look.
Listen up. I need to find your friend Lana. Where is she, Cha?
Hey, that's a girl that sucker punched me. Why everybody looking for her?
Oh, damn, but you know about a girl named Lana.
What did this girl look like? If the press gets wind of what that little puta stole, we're all caca!
Deathface took everything from me. Now I'm gonna take everything from him.
Well, it's definitely animation for grown-ups, and I believe director Bill Plympton, he has a special profile here in France,
Indeed
doesn't he?
He does. He's a 2-time winner of the Grand Prix at the Annecy Animation Festival, arguably the most prominent animation event in the world. His animation style is very distinctive, and he's never been shy about portraying how men and women don't always get along, but also portraying how they really, really click when they do, animated hormones. You can look up one of my favorite sequences from I Married a Strange Person, in which a couple are having sex and the man playfully twists the woman's breasts into, well, balloon animals. I like animated ideas that can only be portrayed in animation. At least I think that's where anatomical balloon animal bosoms come in. They have a lot of fun with stereotypes. I enjoyed this.
Okay, well, next up, we're moving to a film coming out here in France, French cinema. It's called Ethline, or Orphan. It takes a very novel, if a bit confusing, approach to storytelling.
It certainly does. This film's structural gambit, which is very effective if you manage to unravel it in the absence of obvious clues, is to go ahead and cast 4 different actresses whose characters have different names, as if to say this or that episode actually seems to have happened to somebody else entirely, only it turns out they're all playing the central character, but at different points in her life. I walked out of the theater with my head spinning because this is such an intense tale, but I liked it. So, a young woman who has always relied on the kindness and the nastiness of strangers sees her sordid past catch up with her conventional present. The name cast emotes up a storm against a backdrop of what have we got? We've got gambling, prison, physical abuse, and worse, frank sex scenes between sometimes unlikely partners keep the tension interesting. Let's take a look.
Je
te plais?
T'as quel âge, toi?
18.
Je crois pas.
16 alors?
Depuis quand elle est partie de chez vous? Lundi. 4 jours d'absence, ça vous inquiète pas. Elle fait ça tout le temps. Pourquoi tu pars comme ça?
Je suis pas heureuse.
So as we can see from that clip, there's some quite big names in that cast.
There are, and that trailer spells out what's happening, but when you go to see the movie, you don't necessarily know that. Particularly interesting is having Adele Exarchopoulos, who burst on the scene in Blue is the Warmest Color, play the teenage incarnation of Adele Hanel as Renee, the director of a school who's working on having her first child with her husband Darius, played by Julie Lesper, but an English woman, played by Gemma Atherton, who's just gotten out of prison, shows up in her classroom. Before they know it, the police are at the door, and we get flung back in time. How can I describe the mood? It feels as if a quartet of Russian nesting dolls ended up as hostages in a multiplex, which is only showing double features of classic film noir with socially conscious dramas, and then these nesting dolls are dictating their experience in a sleep-deprived state. I hope that's not a description that's been overused.
It sounds discombobulating at the very least. Now we're going to Quebec for a stoner comedy in which a certain kind of grass is grown but not necessarily consumed. Les mauvaises herbes in French, bad seeds in English. It's set in the winter, and filming in Canada, that meant that they were often shooting in -40 temperatures.
That is absolutely true, and yet the result turned out to be a warm comedy. Because of the geography of North America, traditionally, if you're in trouble, you head for the border, Mexico or Canada. But what if you're already in Canada because you're a Canadian stage actor with gambling debts and scary loan sharks are after you? Well, you flee to rural Canada. Jacques gets on a bus in Montreal in his Molière stage costume. He's been appearing in The Misanthrope. And he is rescued from freezing to death in the middle of nowhere by Simon, a crusty older guy on a snowmobile. Now, our frozen thespian is, of course, grateful for the hospitality until he realizes he's a hostage. And that's because his host is in poor health, growing an enormous quantity of marijuana in a heated barn, and he requires help to harvest it. The situation is illegal on several levels, so if anybody discovers it, well, they have to be clonked on the head or held against their will, obviously. When Francesca, a young meter reader, notices telltale wires and tubes going to the barn in the middle of nowhere, her temporary visit turns into a long-term one. Let's take a look.
Je suis comme perdu un peu. Tu fais sur le bord du chemin à 30 sous zéro, un bien danseur de ballet.
Ah, tu n'as pas la télévision? Comment tu passes tes soirées?
Pause de mes journées. J'ai le goût de tout partager avec toi, Jacques.
Brisement, c'est pas nécessaire.
Je vais te montrer quelque chose que j'ai jamais montré à personne.
Oui, oui, oui.
Mal plus payant que le blé d'Inde. Plus risqué aussi. T'en as appris des bonnes, toi. Tu te douilles le cul à un Shylock de Montréal. Le deal est simple. Tu restes ici, tu travailles pour moi. En échange, moi, je ferme ma gueule.
And apart from the mechanics of marijuana harvesting, did you learn anything from this film?
I did. I learned that if you keep saying, don't step out on the frozen lake early on in the film, eventually somebody will be sorry that they didn't take that excellent advice. I learned that forced camaraderie is almost always a fun premise for a film, and here it turns into a three-way friendship between a farmer, an intellectual, and a forthright working-class lesbian. And at the risk of sounding, ignorant, condescending, intolerant, and uncharitable, I learned that if you're thinking of signing up for French classes and you have a choice between a Parisian-style accent and a Quebecois-style accent, then you should probably run for the border if there's only room in the Quebecois class. But that's just my prejudice. You may find it musical and appealing.
I do find it musical and appealing, Lisa. Now, these new movies are all well and good, but there's nothing like a masterpiece that has stood the test of time. An American in Paris, like yourself, but a different one, released in 1951 originally, is being re-released in France.
I was released a little later. I really go for obscure, hard-to-decipher film titles, so this one's a little too obvious for me. No, just kidding. In the USA right now, there is a full-out assault on public education and on the notion that being exposed to people or cultures other than what one already knows is to be avoided at all costs. Oddly enough, after World War II, broadening one's horizons was looked upon as a good thing, and a great many Americans dreamed of going to France in general, and Paris in particular. I'm going to do something to undermine my authority here now. An American in Paris is not the greatest movie musical of all time. That title goes to Singin' in the Rain, but the pleasures here are considerable, actually massive, starting with the musical score by George and Ira Gershwin. George Gershwin's American in Paris ballet, which he composed in the title city in 1928, is arguably his finest work after Rhapsody in Blue, which he composed in 1924. The film was directed by Vincent Minnelli. Gene Kelly did the choreography. Kelly plays Jerry, a GI who decides to stay in Paris after the war since it's always been his ambition to paint. He falls for Lise, played by Leslie Caron. Ballet dancer Caron was only 17 at the time. She not only glides and spins with incredible grace, she's also often on point. Wonderfully neurotic curmudgeon Oscar Levant plays concert pianist Adam Cook. Alan J. Lerner's dialogue pops. Here's an assessment that hasn't changed in a century or so. I quote, American college kids, they come over here for their third year and lap up a little culture. They're always full of opinions that they've overheard. Gene Kelly believed that dance was an art form for everybody, aesthetes and the common man and woman alike. There is breathtaking excellence on display in the dance numbers, and excellence tends to be timeless. Now, just about everybody in Paris, this Paris, is assertive and cultured and has a sense of humor and can sing and dance. And in an early depiction of sexual equality, it tastefully brings us kept women and kept men in a wholesome sort of way. And not only is this a wonderful movie full of zingy dialogue and complex human emotions, it is also the antidote we've all been looking for to an unfortunate ongoing phenomenon. There's an ahistorical, incurious individual on the loose claiming that Paris isn't Paris anymore. Well, oddly enough, it is. When I leave this studio, Paris will be as lovely as it has ever been. The main thing marring the landscape is that the current resident of the White House is staring out from way too many newspaper and magazine covers in the overflowing newsstands that are purveying what we in the trade call news.
Indeed, and I think we can say that Gene Kelly's footwork is still as beautiful as it's ever been. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us this week. We'll leave you with a snippet of the multiple Oscar-winning An American in Paris. Remember to check out our website, and you can also keep up with Encore on our social media channels. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.